The clock read 2:13 a.m. President Ibrahim Traoré sat alone in the command bunker beneath the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, staring at the blinking red light on the secure satellite phone. It hadn't rung in 6 months. Now it pulsed like a heartbeat. He inhaled slowly. This wasn't a regular call. It was protocol black. The last time it was triggered, an attempt had been made on his predecessor's life. This time it was different. The line connected. "Mr. President," came the encrypted voice of his defense minister, Captain Hamidou Sangaré. "We've intercepted communications between a foreign mercenary group and an exiled Burkinabe general. They plan to storm the palace tonight." "How many?" Traoré asked, keeping his voice steady. "More than 30, equipped, coordinated. They're already inside the capital. And we believe someone from the presidential guard is involved." There was a beat of silence. That was the kind of betrayal that didn't just end a presidency, it ended nations. Traoré stood, calm and deliberate. "Lock the gates, disable communications, pull the 1st Battalion inside the inner perimeter." And Hamidou, "Yes, sir. If anyone resists, even my own men, disarm them." Quietly, he hung up. By 2:22 a.m., the palace grounds were bathed in darkness. The electricity was cut as a security measure. The moonlight reflected faintly off the golden dome, casting long shadows through the courtyards. A white armored SUV pulled up at the west entrance. It was driven by Aminata Keita, one of Traoré's most trusted officers, a young, brilliant intelligence commander who had saved him twice before, once in Niger, once in Mali. "You've got 5 minutes, Mr. President," she said, opening the rear door. "They're jamming all outgoing comms. We need to get you to Fort Tambao." "Tambao? That's 600 kilometers north." "That's the point. Nobody will expect it." They sped through the back service road, bypassing the outer perimeter. Inside the car, Keita handed him a Glock and a satellite tracker. "This is now a ghost operation," she said. "No radio, no phone. Trust no one." Traoré nodded. As they passed the marketplace, a flash of movement caught Keita's eye. 2 motorcycles, blacked out, tailing them without headlights. "Hold on," she shouted, swerving violently through a fruit stand. The first burst of gunfire shattered the rear window. Traoré ducked as bullets tore through the upholstery. Keita slammed the SUV into an alley and killed the engine. The motorcycles zipped past. "They'll double back," she whispered. "We run." For the next 15 minutes, President Traoré, head of state, commander-in-chief, and symbol of a rising Africa, ran through the back streets of Ouagadougou with a silenced pistol and no security. They reached a safe house, tucked behind an abandoned mosque. Keita activated a biometric scanner, hidden in a prayer stone. The trapdoor creaked open. Down below, the bunker smelled of old gunpowder and burnt plastic. "This place was built in the Sankara era," she said, closing the door behind them. Traoré caught his breath. "How long do we have?" "An hour. Maybe 2. The mole inside the guard knows about our fallback plans. We need to change the plan." "Where's the convoy to Tambao?" "Compromised," she replied grimly. "One of the drivers didn't show, and the backup was just found dead in a warehouse." Traoré stood in silence. "Then we need to mislead them. Let them think I've fled the country." Keita looked at him. "That's suicide," she said. "If they think you're gone, they'll accelerate the coup. Your supporters will scatter. Your enemies will consolidate." "Exactly," he said. "Which is why I'll appear on radio tonight. A live address." She blinked. "You'll reveal yourself?" "No, you will." He handed her his jacket. "Put this on. Take my decoy vehicle. Broadcast from the northern outpost. Let them chase a ghost." Keita hesitated, then zipped up the uniform. "May your ancestors watch over you," she whispered. "And yours." The door above them suddenly rattled. Keita froze. "Go," Traoré urged. "Now." She bolted through a secondary tunnel, while he moved deeper into the shadows. Above them, heavy boots slammed open the door. They were in, and he was alone. President Traoré barely had time to process Captain Sangaré's last words. You have 1 hour to get out before the power inside the presidential bunker flickered. Not just the lights, but the backup generators too. He stood up from the war table and turned to his bodyguard, Lieutenant Aminata Keita. "Activate Protocol Sable," he ordered calmly. Aminata, a former intelligence officer turned elite protection detail, didn't flinch. She drew her Glock, nodded, and pressed a hidden switch beneath the command console. Somewhere above them, within the palace walls, a silent alarm tripped, sending a single encrypted burst across military frequencies. One phrase, "Tiger has gone dark." Within 30 seconds, 4 members of the Shadow Battalion, his most trusted elite unit, slid into the bunker from a hidden corridor. They wore unmarked black tactical gear, no ranks, no insignias, just purpose. "We have a breach on the perimeter," Aminata reported as gunfire suddenly erupted above them. "They've come early." Someone inside gave them the signal. President Traoré said bitterly, "Let's move." The evacuation plan wasn't meant to be pretty. It wasn't meant to be ceremonial. It was meant for exactly what was happening now, an internal coup, a betrayal from within. They moved through the emergency tunnel beneath the palace, half a mile long, sloping downward, connecting to an old colonial sewer line. As the group advanced, the low rumble of explosions shook the concrete around them. The attackers weren't holding back. "They're not here to arrest you," Aminata whispered, scanning the corners. "They're here to eliminate you." "I know," Traoré replied. "That's why we can't just run. We need to survive and strike back." "Do we know who gave the order?" Traoré stopped mid-step. "Not yet, but I know who benefits most if I die tonight." He was thinking about General Basile Kabore, the head of domestic intelligence, a man who once swore loyalty but had recently grown distant, evasive. A man with too many ties to old political families. A man who thought Africa should bow quietly to European diplomacy. They emerged from the tunnel inside a maintenance shaft near the western edge of Ouagadougou. Waiting there was a modified armored pickup truck, black steel, bulletproof windows, no plates. The Shadow Battalion loaded Traoré into the back seat. Aminata took the front passenger side. She turned to the driver, another loyalist named Corporal Diallo. "We ride silent, no comms, straight to the fallback zone." Diallo nodded. The vehicle roared to life, but they had barely cleared the alley when a drone zipped over them. "Down," Aminata shouted. The drone wasn't armed, but it had a thermal scanner. They were being tracked. The moment it locked in, a hail of bullets smashed into the side of the pickup from 2 motorcycles that appeared from nowhere. The driver swerved violently. Traoré gripped the seat, heart pounding. "South bypass," he barked. "Don't go north, they'll expect that." Diallo grunted and made the sharpest U-turn of his life. The convoy chased them, 4 bikes now, zigzagging between dusty alleys. Each rider wore black helmets, no marks. They were mercs, foreign ones. The president recognized their tactics from combat reports in Mali and Chad. Aminata called, shoving open the passenger window and firing off 2 quick bursts. One biker tumbled, another rode over the wreckage and flipped, but 2 still remained. And then, from a rooftop, a 5th figure appeared. A sniper. A single shot cracked through the air. The bullet missed, but barely. Diallo cursed and slammed the gas. Fallbacks 10 minutes away. They weren't going to make it 10 minutes. Traoré grabbed the radio. "This is Tiger. Respond." A long pause. Then Tiger. "This is Eagle's Nest. We read you. Launch suppression in Zone 3. I repeat, suppression Zone 3. Now." A brief silence, then a soft, "Confirmed. 1 minute to impact." President Traoré looked at Aminata. "Hold on to something." She didn't ask why. Exactly 47 seconds later, the southern edge of the bypass, Zone 3, lit up with the sound of thunder. A government artillery unit, still loyal to the president, opened fire on coordinates, fed by the president's escape drone. Shells exploded along the street, cutting off the bikers' pursuit path. One of the bikes vanished in a cloud of flame. The sniper dropped out of view. The remaining pursuer peeled off. The truck skidded to a stop inside a safe compound, a farm warehouse converted for emergency retreat just outside of town. Loyalist troops poured out, saluting. The president stepped out, shaken but alive. Aminata scanned the skies. We bought time, but not much. President Traoré's eyes burned with resolve. They want to erase me tonight, he said quietly. So tomorrow I erase them. By dawn, the warehouse safehouse was evacuated. President Traoré, Aminata, and the 3 remaining Shadow Battalion members rode in silence through the Sahel, heading north under false identities. Their destination, Gossi, an old military post near the Mali border, long decommissioned and now used only for deep field training, and more importantly, secrecy. Intel says the coup leaders are holding an emergency broadcast at noon, Aminata said, scrolling through a secured military tablet. They're going to declare your resignations and install a transitional government. Under whose command? Traoré asked. She hesitated. General Kabore. Traoré's jaw clenched. So it was true. The same man who had toasted him at last year's Unity Summit, who had cried with him over the loss of young soldiers in Dori, who had once called him little brother. I want him alive, Traoré said flatly. When this is over, the desert heat began to intensify. Their truck crawled across sandy backroads, passing goat herders and rusting wrecks of old military vehicles from French colonial times. Every few kilometers, Aminata would switch SIM cards and scan local radio bands. Something was spreading, fast. He's got international backing, she finally said. France hasn't condemned the coup. The EU has issued a vague call for stability. But what's more interesting is who has spoken out. She turned the screen toward him. It showed a statement from Guinea, then one from Mali, and then a surprising video from the president of Chad, all supporting Traoré. He underestimated how many people are rooting for us, she said with a smirk. Traoré let out a low breath. That's not support, that's calculation. They see an opportunity to reframe the region. Suddenly the truck screeched to a halt. A rusted metal barrier, barely visible in the dunes, lay across the road. Next to it, a lone man in traditional blue Tuareg robes stood silently, holding a staff. Aminata reached for her weapon. No, Traoré said. I know him. The man stepped forward and removed his head covering. It was Colonel Idriss Ahmadou, the former commander of Burkina Faso's desert operations, believed dead in a helicopter crash 3 years earlier. You're supposed to be dead, Idriss said, smiling faintly. That's what I wanted them to think. He motioned toward a side trail. Follow me. Gossi isn't safe. They know you're headed there. As they followed him through a narrow canyon path, Idriss explained everything. After faking his death, he'd built a network of loyalists across the Sahel. Disillusioned soldiers, nomads, and even reformed smugglers who wanted a new kind of leadership, one rooted in honor, not corruption. Your enemies think in cities. They think in parliaments and coups. We think in dust and shadows. They arrived at a hidden encampment, nestled in a ravine, camouflaged by netting and trees. Satellite couldn't see it. Drones couldn't scan it. Inside, dozens of soldiers and tribesmen stood to attention as Traoré entered. Some saluted. Others placed their hands on their hearts. This is the heart of your resistance, Idriss said. But they're coming. They'll send recon drones first, then mercs, then traitors. How many days until they find us? Traoré asked. Maybe 2, Traoré nodded. I won't wait. We take the fight to them. Idriss raised an eyebrow. You want to strike first? I want to take back my country, Traoré said. Tonight, he turned to Aminata. Prepare 3 units. One hits the communications relay near Koudougou. One sabotages the fuel convoys, headed for Ouagadougou. And we hit Koudougou. Aminata finished. Exactly. But before the plan could move forward, a scout burst into the camp, bleeding from the shoulder. They know, he gasped. They've sent a drone strike, less than an hour away. Everyone jumped into action. Aminata pulled up satellite data. We can't outrun it. The canyon's too narrow. Traoré looked at the map. We don't outrun it, he said. Outsmarted. He turned to West. Ib said you faked your death once. Let's do it again. Within minutes they began planting decoy heat signatures across the canyon, Burning barrels, reflective surfaces, animal corpses wrapped in thermal blankets. Then they evacuated the real camp to a secondary cave system a mile away. At 1832 hours, the first Hellfire missile struck. It obliterated the decoy camp. The shockwave rattled the canyon. The sky lit up orange. Dust rained for minutes. But the real President Traoré, his commanders and his war council sat underground, watching the entire thing on a portable feed. "They think you're dead," Aminata whispered. President Traoré leaned forward. "Then let's rise from the ashes." As darkness settled across the Sahel, the canyon still smoldered from the drone strike. Above ground, all that remained were scorched rocks and the charred remnants of what enemy intel believed to be President Traoré's last refuge. It was enough to buy them time and confusion. Deep underground in the hidden cave system, Traoré stood at the center of a flickering tactical board illuminated by battery-powered lanterns. A sand-smeared map of Burkina Faso lay sprawled across a table made of old crates and metal slabs. Aminata pointed to 3 red circles drawn in chalk. "These are the pillars of Traoré's power. The central comms tower near Koudougou, the fuel depot in Kaya, and the staging base at the old French airstrip outside Ouagadougou." Idris leaned in. "The airstrips where he'll gather his international guests, observers and diplomats, to make it all look legitimate." Traoré's eyes narrowed. "Then we hit all 3. Same night. No warnings. 3 strikes? No survivors?" Aminata asked. "Only the ones who surrender," Traoré replied. "Everyone else chose their side." At exactly 23 o'clock hours, 3 convoys moved out from the hidden canyon camp. None had license plates. None carried flags. They blended into the desert, navigating by stars and instinct. Aminata led the Koudougou team. She dressed in black fatigues, her eyes sharp, her Glock holstered, and her rifle locked. They reached the outskirts of the comms tower by 2:10 a.m. The site was guarded by 12 men, mercenaries, not army. Their posture was too relaxed, their attention dulled by arrogance. Aminata whispered, "Phase 1, silence." Her team fanned out. One by one, the guards fell, tasered, knocked out, or dropped by suppressed rifles. By 2:28, the tower was theirs. She plugged in a portable drive into the control terminal, uploading a virus. "Will crash all encrypted frequencies linked to Traoré's command net." The virus took 20 seconds. In that time, the entire capital's military communications were silently disrupted. Scrambling orders, crashing connections, freezing targeting systems. Phase 1 complete. Meanwhile, Colonel Idris's unit reached the Kaya fuel depot. Their approach was anything but quiet. 3 trucks barreled through the main gate, headlights off, tires chewing gravel. Explosives had already been pre-planted by locals loyal to Traoré. With a single radio click, the fuel tanks lit up like a sunrise, roaring flames towering into the night sky. Ammunition caches erupted, one by one. The blast wave could be felt 10 kilometers away. Traoré's fuel supply was gone. Back at the canyon, President Traoré was already en route to the airstrip. His real target. Only 4 men rode with him. It wasn't a battalion. It wasn't an army. It was an infiltration unit. He wore a balaclava and desert goggles. No insignia, just fire in his heart. At 3:45 a.m., they reached the perimeter of the airstrip. It was quiet, eerily so. The flags of France and the EU were already flying on one corner of the compound. "This is how he wants to legitimize it," Traoré muttered. "A puppet government, dressed up in foreign silk." The group cut the chain-link fence and slipped inside. Inside a hangar near the main runway, voices echoed. Through a broken window, Traoré could see General Traoré himself, speaking to a group of well-dressed foreigners. Maps of Burkina Faso spread out behind him. "He's already selling the country," whispered Diallo, one of the guards. "Not tonight," Traoré said. They moved like shadows. The first guard dropped, then the next. Inside the hangar, the diplomats didn't know what hit them. Smoke grenades, blackout flares. A loudspeaker boomed, "Drop your weapons. This facility is now under Burkina Bay command." The Europeans ducked, some screamed. General Traoré drew his weapon, but hesitated when he saw the figure emerging through the smoke. President Traoré stepped forward, rifle lowered but gaze sharp. Ibrahim, Traoré stammered. You're dead. Which? Traoré said coldly. I'm what you created. A man with nothing to lose and everything to take back. Traoré fired. Traoré dove to the side. The shot missed. Diallo returned fire, wounding Traoré in the shoulder. The general collapsed to his knees. Traoré walked over slowly, weapon now raised. You betrayed the people. You sold our sovereignty. You tried to erase me. I tried to save Burkina Faso. Traoré hissed. No, Traoré said. You tried to sell it. He turned to the foreign diplomats, cowering nearby. Go home. This is not your show anymore. To the surprise of many, Traoré didn't shoot Traoré. He ordered him restrained and transported to a military tribunal. Then he turned to the camera that had been set up for the coup's transition ceremony. He faced it directly and spoke in a tone clear and commanding. My name is Ibrahim Traoré. I am the president of Burkina Faso. I was elected by the people, and I am still here. Across the nation, screens flickered back to life. The virus was now reversed, just in time for the world to witness his words. And in that moment, power shifted again. By dawn, the world had changed. President Traoré's broadcasts spread like wildfire. Across West Africa and beyond, phones buzzed with headlines. President Ibrahim Traoré alive and in control. Coup crumbles after surprise airstrip strike. Foreign observers expelled at gunpoint. But inside Burkina Faso, the situation remained razor-thin. The country was on the brink. Half the capital had gone quiet. The other half buzzed with fear, waiting to see which flag would fly by sunset. Traoré knew it wasn't over. He stood atop a platform in the old military tribunal hall, deep inside the fortified northern command base. Before him sat General Traoré, bandaged, handcuffed, and expressionless. Around them, journalists, soldiers, ministers, and tribal elders gathered. The entire trial was being broadcast live. This is not a trial of one man, Traoré said into the microphone. This is a trial of an idea that power belongs to a few, and not the people. Traoré's defense was brief. He blamed foreign influence, regional instability, and even Traoré's dangerous popularity. But he never denied the attempt. The tribunal lasted less than 2 hours. When the judges pronounced him guilty of treason and conspiracy, Traoré didn't flinch. But outside, crowds erupted, some in cheers, others in protest. Aminata stepped to Traoré's side. You've won the room, she whispered. But not the country. They're still watching, waiting. Traoré nodded. Then let's give them something they'll never forget. That night, he planned his boldest move yet. While the coup was now publicly crushed, remnants of the conspiracy still lingered. Small factions of the Presidential Guard had barricaded themselves inside the National Armory. Rogue commanders still controlled several barracks. Let's not wait for them to regroup, Traoré said. We finish it tonight. He didn't just send soldiers. He led them. By 8 p.m., Traoré rode at the head of a convoy through the streets of Ouagadougou, standing tall in an open-top jeep, flanked by loyal forces in full gear. Citizens poured into the streets, unsure at first, but then began to cheer. Others banged pots and sang old revolutionary songs. Word spread fast. The president is back, in person. They reached the armory by 9 o'clock. Spotlights blazed across the walls. The mutinous guards were dug in, but they hadn't expected a direct confrontation. Traoré stepped out alone and walked to the gate. He held a megaphone and spoke plainly. You swore to defend this nation. I give you one last chance. Open these gates and rejoin your country, or be remembered as traitors. There was silence. Then the clank of rifles hitting concrete. One by one, the guards surrendered. No bullets fired, no blood spilled. Inside, Traoré walked the halls, inspecting the weapons cache. He found crates marked with foreign lettering, evidence of international support for the coup. This, he said, turning to Aminata, is the war behind the war. The hidden hand. We'll deal with them, she said. Later. First, let's finish cleaning house. By midnight, all rebel factions in Ouagadougou had fallen. The capital was his again, but the war wasn't over. At 1 a.m., he summoned his war council in the palace bunker. He stood before them, eyes bloodshot, face smeared with dirt and victory. "We survived," he said. "But we were naive. We thought the threat was only inside our borders. It's not. It never was." A hologram map lit up behind him, flashing points marked in red across Western Africa and Europe. "We were fighting ghosts. Now we fight the men behind the ghosts." Amanita leaned forward. "You mean France?" Traoré didn't answer directly. "I mean anyone who thinks Africa is still for sale." A silence filled the room. Then he gave his final order of the night. "Prepare the delegation. We go to the African Union, in person. I want them to see our scars and our resolve." Someone asked, "What if they block your plane?" He looked up. "Then we walk." 3 days after retaking the capital, President Ibrahim Traoré stepped off a military aircraft onto the tarmac in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the heart of the African Union. No entourage, no gold-trimmed jet, just a lean squad of shadow black commandos and a convoy of old land cruisers parked beside the terminal. The other leaders had arrived in luxury. Traoré arrived in resolve. Inside the marble hall of the AU, murmurs echoed through the delegates as he entered. Many thought he'd be dead by now. Others had already begun rewriting speeches for a post-Traoré West Africa. But here he was, alive, unshaken, unbent. Aminata Keita walked a step behind him, eyes scanning the crowd. She had defused bombs, dodged bullets, and stared down death. But nothing felt more volatile than this room. The AU president offered a diplomatic nod. "President Traoré, your attendance was unexpected. Survival always is," Traoré replied. He stood at the circular dais in front of 54 heads of state. "Before I speak," he said, his voice carrying with the tone of a soldier, not a politician, "I ask that the foreign press and non-African observers be excused for 10 minutes." The request stunned the room. Then slowly, the outsiders filed out. When the doors closed, Traoré looked around. "Now let me speak to family." He didn't use a script. He didn't read prepared notes. He spoke like a man who had bled for every word. "I was almost killed, not by an enemy army, but by hands I once shook, and voices that once whispered loyalty. A coup was staged, funded, armed, and defended, not by Burkina Faso's poor or Burkina Faso's brave, but by foreign interests who see African nations as pawns and African leaders as puppets." He paused. Several leaders shifted uncomfortably. "I will not name names, not yet, but you all know who they are. You've received their calls, their offers, their threats. So did I." He scanned the room. "But I did not bow." He took a breath. "And I'm here to say that Africa must stop bowing." A wave of silence passed. Traoré walked toward the center of the room. "From Ouagadougou to Bamako, from Niamey to Kinshasa, we're told to stay stable, to stay civil. That means stay weak, stay quiet, stay dependent." He pounded his fist on the marble table. "Well, I say no." A roar of support erupted from the Mali delegation, then Guinea, then Chad. Even Senegal, usually quiet, began to clap. Traoré continued, "We are not asking to start wars. We are asking to end servitude." He turned to the screen behind him, which displayed images of the weapons caches seized during the failed coup marked with foreign languages, NATO serial numbers, and private military firm stamps. "This is not security. This is sabotage." He raised a single finger. "From today, Burkina Faso will be drafting a new security charter. No more foreign bases. No more defense deals without public approval. And I ask every nation here to consider the same." Some heads of state nodded. Others avoided his eyes. Traoré walked back to his seat. "I am not the perfect leader, but I am still here. And I will fight not just to survive, but to build a future where our sons don't need rifles to protect their sovereignty, and our daughters don't need permission to dream." A stunned silence followed. Then the room stood. Not all, but enough to matter. Aminata stepped beside him. "They're watching. Every camera, every rival, every hope." "I know," Traoré said. He smiled, not the smile of a man who won a battle, but one who had lit a fire. That night, as he boarded the plane back to Burkina Faso, the AU released a statement unlike any before. It didn't name enemies, but it didn't praise any stabilization. It said only this: "Africa hears the voice of her sons, and she remembers. Back in Ouagadougou, crowds filled the streets again, not in fear but in faith. President Ibrahim Traoré stood atop the palace steps once more. The red beret on his head, the scars still fresh on his face. He raised one hand, not in farewell, but in warning. "I survived your coup," he said in his final speech of the night. "But I am not the same man you tried to kill. I am the man who will never bow again." And the world knew. This was not just a survivor. This was a storm.